In continuation with our rat-infested Briggs & Stratton twin here, if you want to go and see how horrible this rat's nest was that was in this thing, down in the description I'll have a link for that video. But we're going to continue the how-tos with this. We've already done the coils on it, and now we're going to go ahead and put this carburetor on. Now, if you're going to do one of these carburetors, you really should make sure to also do a tune-up kit, which I'll post a picture of. And the link for that, along with this carburetor, is also in the description. Now, for the eagle eye among you, you'll see that that, obviously, is not new. Now, what I've ended up doing is I've ended up pulling that in order to be able to run this on my testing stand that I have this sitting on. Now, the reason being is for that little solenoid piece you saw in that little video clip there to open, this has to have 12 volts applied to one side and a ground to the other. And rather than deal with that where these are so easy to get the solenoid out of, I just popped in a filler plug. Now, all that is some stupid California type stuff. You really honestly do not need it if your carb is working correctly. Somebody in legislature just thought they knew more than the average mechanic, that's all. So, I'm going to set the camera down and we're going to start taking this apart. So the first step obviously is to get the entire top off. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This will all come off in one unit. But where you're working on the carburetor and you're going to be putting in a brand spanking new air filter and everything, you might as well undo those and take that off also. As you can see, these filters pull in everything from the front of the machine, so they end up looking like this. So from here, we'll pull this off, and like I said, it all just comes up as one unit. I'm going to try to do this all with just one finger and inevitably drop this carb and cry. Ready? There we go. So this is the older style solenoid, and this is the newer style solenoid. And as you can see, you can actually get to this one when the carb is on, whereas the old style you can't. That's part of the reason why it is I run these carburetors on everything now. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take off the choke connection. And that is simply just a couple of 5/16. And the reason why we're going to take it off is because it's adjusted in, it's preset. You don't want to have to go and mess with trying to redo it. So it's easier just to pull this off. Taking the time to disconnect and drain all of the fuel out. While we're here, I'll just point out on the pump right now that this is the out, this is your pulse, and this is your fuel in. And these rot out all the time, and they look perfectly fine till you clean them up. So check these. I'll post a link down below in case you need one. These are commonly a problem if you're not getting enough gas after you've done a full carburetor replacement. So we got that all drained out. And we're going to wedge this gas line up here out of the way, so that hopefully it stays away from where you guys are looking. Sorry for hitting you just then. And let's talk about the next step. So the next step is you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 that you got to remove. 1, 2, and 3 are easy. This one requires doing it with a wrench, so I usually recommend doing it first. On a side note, when you go to put these back on, always just loosely put them on until you are sure and positive that you have all of them correct, because otherwise they will pull against each other and will not go together. Another sign of a decent kit when you're ordering these, well, we've got this kit here, is that it will actually have the 2 gaskets that go on either of these ends. So as you can see, that doesn't fit. So we'll get an extension here. And I'm trying to reach over the top of you guys and do this so that you can see exactly what's going on. And now at this point, we should be able to jiggle it a little and have it come loose. Like so. Now, on the back side of this is a PVC hose right here that you're going to have to go and disconnect. And you just kind of squish it and then pull it out. There we go. And then the whole front falls over. And what I can't really do and hold the camera at the same time is you need to pull this one out by turning the whole assembly sideways. So I'm going to set this camera down. And what we're going to do is hold the choke lever in underneath. See, like that. And then we're going to hold this assembly and we're going to turn and then push to the left, like so. There's the entire assembly removed. And from here, we'll switch over to a workbench. This is clamped into the vise by way of lifting the choke piece up and using where the choke screws go. And just lightly clamped. I mean, it's really thin cast aluminum, so don't be overly brutal with it. Now, these are 7/16, and this is an inverted Torx bit. If you end up popping these out. And if you want, in the description, I'll include those also. Rather, the inverted Torx bit in order to be able to get those off of there. Because if you're setting these up for racing and you're trying to make a carb adapter, you'd want shorter studs put in. So that's going to come off, and we're going to set this aside in order. And we need to pay attention to what gaskets, because there's different sizing gaskets based on which side of the carburetor you're on. So one side of the carburetor has this gasket and the other side of the carburetor gets this gasket. And now we're going to need an inverted Torx. I'll make sure to post a link in the description for these because they took me a bit to find. And we're just going to go and lightly give it a couple of oogas and get it to come loose. There we go. Now, this gasket has to come off to get those out. But as you notice, the gasket is a pain to get off. And if I let the Torx do the job, it'll undo most of the gasket for me and come off there. There, I got all but a little bit off. And now that pops loose, and we just simply swap some things over. Now our new gasket goes on like so. There we go. Now we drop our Torx screws back in, and you want to go back and forth with these as you're torquing down and cross pattern them. And just before you do anything, double check that everything's going the right direction here. And we're just going to get one click on each. And then we're just going to go and give it a little extra. Good. All right. So from there, we're going to do the wide gasket. And then this goes the same direction as your fuel does. So this goes this way. And put the 7/16 back on. If you're seeing this interruption while I'm putting the carburetor together on the bench, it's because I managed to do it wrong. So what you need to do is the round end one with the little bit of a curve that direction goes into the throttle over here. And you can see the bend that brings it around the intake, and then the bend that brings it back in order to connect into here. On the choke side, the rod has to be on the outside of the intake area in order to be able to go like this underneath the intake. So now I'm going to flip it up, and we're going to go and line it up with those on camera and put it together. Now when you go to flip it up, you want to have your finger sitting on that choke piece so it can't move. You're going to rotate it and flip it. And nice and loosely and carefully put in the two top intake bolts. And you want to put them all four in and get them all lined up. And then very softly ooga-dooga them into place. And you want to just tap them lightly into place. This cast iron, if these gaskets are worn out or you're reusing the old ones, will actually stretch and snap. And I'm sorry to have my hand in the way. If you put a finger on the end of this bolt and push in while you turn it with your other hand, it seems to be the easiest way to get it in there. And just a light ooga-dooga your first round. Can't get to that one. And now we're going to fully tighten this one. And now we're going to lightly ooga-dooga back around. There we are. So now we'll work on getting our choke hooked up, and that just simply goes over the end. Hopefully you guys can see me. Through that bottom piece, and then the choke bolts up right here. Now the choke cable fights you on getting the inner one put on. So if you put the outer one on as a bit of a pivot, then you can push up on the choke cable assembly in order to get the second one on. And I just pinched my choke cable. There we go. Alright, so at this point, we'll undo this and hook that up. That new barb fitting is most definitely stretching out that old hose. And I've decided we're going to run and grab some fresh gas because I don't know if the camera will catch it. But, yep, right there. You can see the Obama water in that gas. That gas is only a month and a half old. Isn't that sad? Alright, so at this point, if we grab our Hulkman and we nail that starter with about 2,000 cranking amps worth of Wampet, and we choke it a little bit, we should be able to get it to start. Oh, got an air bubble in the system. Yeah, it'll take it a little bit to get through the air bubbles, unfortunately. Oh, turn the Hulkman back on. Well, there we go. If that was helpful for you, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel in order to see more stuff like this. If you want to see racing stuff, I've got a second channel called RCG Racing. You're welcome to come join. And if I was able to help you, I'm glad that I was able to go and get your project up and running with you. Have a good day. Stay tuned for more.